E46 M3 is one of BMW's most iconic cars, and just a few years ago they were an enthusiast car bargain, but now a decent one sells for easily 5 figures, and a decent one with the manual transmission can cost you more than a brand new Mustang. While this one is hard to call decent, it does have the rare 6-speed manual transmission. It was totaled due to flood damage, but the seller claims it runs and drives very well, but just for a short period of time before it completely dies. I've made it clear in previous videos, I don't like the idea of rebuilding flood cars, although they can be incredible salvage gambles. If you hit the flood jackpot, you can actually have a decent car fixed on the cheap. Just a few years ago, I bought this flooded Chevy Spark totally sight unseen. I just wanted it for its body parts, but when I got it, it had damp carpets, low mileage, and literally every single system in it worked. All of this cost under $1,500. Insurance companies will almost always total out flood damaged cars, even if it's minor, because of the long-term implications that a flood brings. While the problem might not exist today, if a circuit board or wiring loom sat in water, that will accelerate its failure. Now, flood cars always look great. There's generally no body work needed, but it could be a lot more in depth than fixing a few panels. There's 3 major things anybody needs to keep in mind when it comes to considering a flood car as a project. Number 1, how much water got in? How high did it rise? Number 2, how long did that water sit in the car? And 3, what type of water was it? Was it salt water or fresh water? If just a little bit of water got in, made the carpets wet, kind of like the Chevy Spark, you could get away with a lot, but if it raised halfway through the car, that's when you start to destroy electronics, especially if it's salt water. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any of this information when it comes to this specific M3. The one thing keeping me most interested is the price. It's literally a quarter the price of the next cheapest coupe 6-speed manual M3 on Auto Tempest. And really, I kind of just did a generic search on Auto Tempest. I wasn't even searching for E46s nor M3s. I typed in a couple of keywords and this thing popped up. Let me show you how I landed upon this cheap M3. I left almost every search field open, but where it says keywords, I type needs work, a common phrase used by sellers trying to market a not so perfect car. I also selected manual transmissions only and for sale by private parties, which has been hands down the best way to buy a car in my experience. It used to be that I'd have to jump from one site to another to scour as many car listings as possible, but Auto Tempest has streamlined this process. They combine all search results for every major online automotive marketplace on one page. And there's this incredible feature that will provide you with Craigslist classifieds outside of your hometown. With one click, Auto Tempest will launch multiple tabs for each surrounding city, providing you with more listings you wouldn't have seen otherwise. Quite possibly the best part is how many different filters can be added to custom tailor your car hunt. I'm going to drop a few custom Auto Tempest links in the description box. One with all the E46 M3s in the country, and the other will be for cars that need work, the same search term that helped me snag this M3 super cheap. Now, I bought a handful of cars that I found on Auto Tempest, including my lemon Lincoln MKC, the blue supercharged Jaguar, a dirt cheap CLK55 AMG, and now this E46. Whether you're looking for the best deal on a brand new ride, or maybe a cheap project and anything in between, make sure you check out autotempest.com. Again, I'll drop a link in the description box below, and I've got to give them a huge thanks for helping me snag this bargain BMW and for continually supporting the channel. So here's the seller story on the M3. They bought it at auction with a flood branded title. They described the flood damage as not that bad, which is how anyone selling a flood damaged car describes it. The car was originally black and they wanted it red, so instead of going with a nice BMW Amola red, they chose Ferrari Rosso Corsa. Now, to verify everything they were telling me, I did pull a quick auction history report and everything pretty much checked out. But after a few months of their ownership, the car would randomly die, which was diagnosed as a bad alternator. The alternator was replaced and the car would continue to die. So they replaced the replacement alternator and you guessed it, didn't fix the problem. They told me that the problem was probably still the alternator. Alright, so this isn't your ideal cream puff M3, but then again, it only costs a fraction of what a cream puff M3 would cost. So I let them know I wanted to buy the car as long as it checked out in person. I just had one request, that they charge the battery beforehand so that I could test it for at least a few minutes. All right, right off the bat, yeah, this part on the hood, this is not wrapped. This is actual paint. And believe it or not, the paint job is really, really good on this thing. So that's a positive, you know, when you're talking about a car that's been repainted. Now, the original color was black. Supposedly all the door jambs and everything have been done, so we'll check that in a moment. But then the next thing we got to look at is how brutal the condition of this front bumper is. I guess there was a lip or something on here. You can see where there's some fill or some epoxy just got ripped off and pretty much destroyed the front bumper. So That's something I wouldn't want to repair. I'd want to replace. Nice thing is this car is old enough to the point where they probably got a lot of aftermarket bumpers. They're likely not too expensive, and I'd imagine they fit pretty well. I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be grills here, and here we do have the main center grill. These two front grills, you could see they're popping off a little bit, but these look to be aftermarket as well, kind of cheap. So again, maybe something that's just a clip behind there, maybe something we find a replacement for. I don't know. But this is a tough one, because again, the job is pretty done. The line's not bad on it. It just is, it's a little funky. And the roof is black too, but the roof being black is not a big deal. It's, all right. So looking at the driver's side of the car, pretty good shape. Again, this paint, you know, if we look all over, it's really dirty, but the job's really good. It's a base coat, clear coat job. So if you got this car repainted professionally like this car was, yeah, it would probably cost you a minimum $3,000. So I, again, look at this as a positive. I'd rather have a nicely repainted car than a car with 20-year-old paint and door dings and things like that. And there's no major damage on this side at all. Now the wheels are in need of some help, especially here in the front. First of all, these tires. What are these, like? They look like winter tires. And yeah, it's just too big of a tire. The wheels all scratched up, but I'm pretty sure that these are the original M wheels that would have come on this car. The rear ones look really, really decent. Again, needed new tires, but we've got the center cap, we've got a better condition wheel. All of these could be resprayed or maybe just a new set of wheels in total. All right, the rear, where do we start? I don't think this is the correct placement or size M3 badge that came originally on the car. Right here, these taillights. Another thing that's not really my favorite, but something that's easily replaceable, and they make aftermarket ones that look original and they're not that expensive. All right, coming down the passenger side, this is where we have some body damage and some nasty body damage. Crack the paint here. It looks like we got almost a bullet hole. This definitely was dented in. You can see at an angle. So the previous owner, the current owner, I should say, has committed to repairing this if we make a deal at $5,000. It has to be at $5,000. And frankly, this is something I'd rather be done with the same shop that painted it, because they'll be able to match it really well versus me going and trying to get a color match for this red color here. So really that shouldn't be a big deal as long as the original shop takes care of it. The M3 grill on this side looks really nice. Has the M3 logo, which is missing on the other side. Again, probably a decal or a badge that we can order online really inexpensively. This front wheel has the same issue the other front wheel has, and has those weird tires on them. So body is kind of what we expected here. Depending on whether or not we decide to keep this, we're looking at probably a couple $100 for replacement bumper grills. If we have to replace the kidney grills, $300-400. I don't think we have to replace this. I think there's just a little badge that goes right there. And then if we come around these tail lights, another couple $100. We're at about $500-600 for the rear body. And again, this is considering buying aftermarket stuff that we install. And if we have to paint anything, we paint ourselves. So if we end up throwing another $500-600 at the exterior of this car to make it look the part, it's still a good deal. The big question is the interior, the electronics, and really how this thing runs and drives. Time for the fun part, the flood part. When I look at flood cars, I always try and look for signs of water just beating up stuff. And right here on the door panel, I mean, nothing really. The leather or fake leather here is in good shape. There's nothing that looks like it was waterlogged and is now falling apart or crispy or crunchy. Let's see this. Power driver's seat still works. And the other area, of course, the carpeting. So we take a look here. Let's see. Wow. This is, well, besides the bottle cap and the McDonald's fries, the carpeting is in decent shape. Again, like, car that sat in water for a long time usually has some really dingy, usually crunchy feeling, nasty carpet, unless it was taken care of immediately. This is not half bad. Vacuum, shampoo the front seat here. It'll be perfect. Now, it's very clear this car is really dirty, but nothing a vacuum cleaner wouldn't take care of. Again, the rear carpet's not bad. Money back right there. Won't tell them about that. Man, a good cleaning, and I think you could have a really solid looking interior. Now, this right here, this steering wheel, would look amazing if it looked new. And I know they make steering wheel trim kits for this car, and you can get different color threads and stuff, and they're really inexpensive, like $20-$30. So something I would definitely do. Same thing with the original shift knob here. It's seen better days. Now the trim here was obviously painted to match the body color, and this was done at the body shop that painted this car. It looks pretty good considering, if you remember what the auction photos look like, they had this really kind of funky look to it right here. All in good shape. Looks like it was a high quality job. One of the nice things that they did is they painted the insides of the doors. You know, cheap jobs, you rarely ever seen this done. And look, there's like no overspray on the gaskets. Again, this was a really decent job done. You can see there's a couple like fish eyes in here. That's not a big deal whatsoever, as long as you don't see an overspray everywhere. I tell you, this is a really decent job that was done on this car. Just in case this is something super simple, and look, you could see usually, yeah, see these on the E46, this is like hidden up and you could pull it down. It's got our major fuse box here. Somebody's been in here messing around. Look, fuse, is it blown? Yep. So that's good to see, and also bad to see because it's probably not going to affect our issue. But on here, you just want to look and see if they have, there's no alternator fuse, or they might call it a generator. So I don't see that. What I do see right here, see it says engine control only M3, 22, 29, and 30. I'm going to pull those three, but that could cause issues. Probably not. I would think that if they were swapping alternators, they checked fuses already. But let me just pull 22, 29, and 30 really quick, and we'll see if any of those happen to be bad. Conveniently, they got the little clip here. Here's 22, and it's good. So 22 is fine. All right, here's 29, and that one also good. Now, the other thing that's always interesting when you're looking at fuse boxes on any used car you're looking at, look for an inconsistency in fuses. So you can see, like, see how all these are all the same, and then these ones in the middle are your spare fuses from BMW. This one's been replaced right here. That one's been replaced just because they're not the same. But here's 30, and that's interesting that that's been replaced, and that is one of the ones that our engine control system is on. So let's see if it's good or bad. And for 30, appears to be good. So probably not the issue with our charging system. All right. First thing I notice is just look how red the engine bay is here. Everything was painted, even under the hood. Usually, again, in a cheap paint job, they would never, ever pull an engine and paint it. I'm wondering if they pulled the engine. I mean, look at the rail down there. Is it painted all the way back? It's hard to see. We've got this aftermarket intake, which to me is a little ugly. I kind of like stock stuff. Maybe if it's cheap enough, we would source a stock part. I noticed that this right here, this is probably a PCV line of some sort. I'm guessing it just bridges from here to here. It's gone, so we're going to have to check and see how much one of those costs. But otherwise, everything is here, and I'm not running it quite yet because we don't want to run the car since it's not charging. I want to see if I can get a few mile drive in, and maybe we can check it out running after we get back because I don't want to get stranded on that drive. And the last thing I'll do here, this is all loose. What's going on? Okay, we're missing a nut right here. I want to just check this. So if you're checking a flood car out at auction, always pull the dipstick and see what the oil itself looks like. That's definitely oil, but car that was in a flood and waterlogged, it'll be like the oil water experiment you did as a kid. The oil will rise to the top and it will look like the car's been overfilled, and you might even see some water droplets at the end of your dipstick. Looks like it's fine enough for us to take a couple-minute drive. Let's hope we don't get stuck. So far at low speeds, everything feels good, but of course we want to open it up. We want to make sure there's no funny rattles, no shakes, no misfires. This will really probably be the deciding factor on whether or not we spend the $5,000 on this car. Put it into sport mode. This thing is surprisingly way more fun than my 996 911. And I can't believe I'm saying that. I would never think that like a souped up 3 Series, but this is why people must really love these things. But so far, first to second gear feels really good. No problems with the shifts. Definitely no hesitation, no misfires. So that's a really good sign. we'll want to get it into some higher gears and make sure that it cruises really nice. Make sure that there's no other funky noises. It's amazing how obtrusive the traction control systems are on these old cars. Man, this thing is a ton of fun to drive. It definitely isn't perfect, but I think for $5,000 we can make it work. All right, go ahead now. Nothing? Mission accomplished thanks to the tractor. I don't know how clear it was, everything you just saw, but basically what happened when the delivery driver tried to start the car, it would not start. There were chimes going on, there were lights going on like it were a weak battery, but this is probably the issue the seller was talking about, where basically it seems like the alternator has failed and it just will cut off. He said actually when he was loading this car on the truck, the car was running, it was idling as they were walking around it, and then it just died. With the M3 home, it's time to start digging and figuring out what our issue is, and I'm kind of wondering if our problem is more flood related or more old German car related. You got to figure this car is 2 decades old. Now I did mess around just a little bit with the car and I've already started its tear down, and I haven't found anything in particular yet. I did find one major ground wire soaked in oil, and I cleaned it all off, hooked it all back up, and that did not fix the charging issue. While we could check major things, obvious things in front of our face, I think the big thing to do here is to get a shop manual and a wiring diagram. That will take the guesswork out of all the different electrical systems, specifically the ones involved with the charging system of the car, and should give us a roadmap to our near 2-decade-old M3. Now when a car is in a flood, water is a really good conductor and it can start to short out things left and right, so it really can be anything at this point. And if you have any ideas, or maybe you want me to start by searching in a certain place or another, let me know down in the comments section below. And if the problem is just with wiring, like this screams of a ground wire issue, then our problem is going to be super cheap to fix. The rest of the car, the body stuff, and some of the mechanics, those will actually be the expensive parts, but when this car is all put back together, it's going to be an awesome driver, and it's no wonder why these cars keep kind of just stair-stepping in value, especially with the 6-speed manual. So if you're excited about the prospects of a very cheap E46 M3, be sure to hit that like button. Also, if you're not already following me on Instagram, where I'm going to post progress to the M3 and all my other projects before anything goes live here on YouTube, just visit me right here. Click the link in the description box below. I want to give a huge thanks to each and every one of you for watching today, and I'll catch you very soon.